This is episode number 517 of the Health and Fitness Podcast, brought to you by InnerFight in association with Smith Street Paleo. Please hop over to smithstreetpaleo.com. Get all your yummy paleo goodness. Welcome back to another edition of the show, and the second series that we've been running, Getting Stronger is the title. If you missed the first one, hop over and get it. It's all about the rise of ultra, why ultra running is coming up so fast. First episode of this series was last week. We were talking all about defining strength in episode 515. If you missed that, we strongly suggest you go and check that out before listening to this show. And today, we're going to talk all about different strength protocols. Andre, you spent a fair bit of time researching this. I've spent a fair bit of time doing a lot of these things. We've got some absolute gold protocols of strength training to go through today, don't we? This is cool. I needed to be reminded of some of these. Mate, rip into it. What have we got?
We're going to start with the first one, which is a classic 5x5, which is one of the oldest and most traditional ways of building strength and muscle mass. It's a 5x5 means you're going to do 5 sets of 5 repetitions. That's approximately going to be starting at a light load and increasing load every set. And essentially that 5x5 format, not increasing every set, increasing every week.
Yeah.
That 5x5 format stays the same the whole time.
Right.
And you essentially aim to get that adaptation in order to increase week by week. It's a 3-day-a-week training program.
Right.
Every time you're going to have some sort of squatting, some sort of pressing, and some sort of pulling. So that can vary from a front squat, back squat, overhead squat, the bench press, a military press, and a bench press again. And the pulling can be a barbell row, deadlift, and a barbell row. That's the classic format, but you can edit that and give other exercises as well.
Mate, I tell you, I let you in on a secret. This is why I'm so strong today. Maybe not. 5x5, university, school in 95. How old were you?
1 year.
1 year old. So when you were 1, this makes me feel really old, mate. When you were 1, nothing against your age, you've got a lot of life to live. I was doing this strength protocol, 5x5. It's one. We're going to talk about a lot of the very old ones, but what I want to say from the start is strength protocols that have been tried and tested, a lot of them have been the same for the last 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
And I remember doing 5x5, university gym, mate, start with some of those movements that you spoke about, real, what we'd call old school compound movements, which says something to me about strength. It's basic. It's super basic. We spoke in the first show about defining strength, and we set out and we put a marker out and said it's all about how you can carry your body weight, and then after that, we'll kind of see. But this 5x5, it really is, I mean, they're the simplest moves, mate, right?
Yeah, and that's what's kind of cool about it. You know, like, it's to not overcomplicate things. But this cycle is not made to not overcomplicate things. It's simply because it's not necessary.
Yeah.
It's built up around these 3 major compound movements, and then there's a few accessory movements you can add to it.
Yeah.
But it's always those 3 big ones, and it's only 3 training days a week.
So super simple.
Exactly.
But what those 3 training days are doing, mate, and why there are only 3, and I think this is the biggest thing that we're seeing now, people just doing way too much, is because read Arnie's encyclopedia, the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding. It's one of the best books I've ever read. It's like this thick. It's in those days, in those 4 days where you're not stressing the muscles, that the muscles are actually growing and getting stronger. And that's why a lot of these protocols that we're going to speak about now, they're not massive volume every single day. So I think that's something that's people should really understand. And they're super basic, but, mate, they last for quite a number of weeks. You've got 5x5 up there. How long does it last for?
The 5x5, where does it say here? Actually, it doesn't say here, but I'm pretty sure. It's a 7 to 9 week cycle. So the first 4 to 6 week is prep work, followed by the last 3 weeks, which is the peak phase.
Right.
Meaning that for the 4 to 6 weeks, we're just building adaptation and slowly increasing. And by those last 3 weeks out of the 9 weeks, you should be kind of peaking, which means that after the 9 weeks, we're no longer expecting you to constantly grow on that kind of wave you've been hitting.
Yeah.
You're going to have to take a deload,
Yeah.
and then we kind of restart the cycle, but at a higher baseline than you did in that first week.
And that's what also I think people are not always in massive check with, the fact that their body might need a deload, and it also needs a long time. You said the first part of the program is about a little bit of adaptation. Strength is adaptation. It's adapting to carrying a heavier load. And there's actually one thing on Rob Orlando's strongman course that I did, and he calls it cold bar training through. I won't bore you with the backstory, but what this guy did is he set up a bench in his basement with 100 kilos on it. He used to go down about 5 times a day, absolutely cold, like no warm-up or nothing, and he'd do 1 rep of bench press. When those 5 reps throughout that week felt good, like he'd go in any time and he'd do those reps, he'd do 1 rep each time or 2 reps each time, depending on what he wanted, he'd then increase the weight by 1 kilo or 2 kilos. And he'd continue this, so his body, and he was telling me about it when I've been with him, his body adapts to that weight. So it's just like lifting your groceries. We're talking about it in show 1, lifting your groceries. Rob would just go down there, and he took his bench he put something like 50 pounds on his bench, which is like 20, 25 kilos.
Yeah, that's
like
serious.
It's absolutely no joke. And the point why I put that up, and that took him about 3 months. Why I bring that up is these other protocols and the 5x5 protocol, and that's why I asked Andre the time, they take time.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to get strong in 3 weeks. The Open was coming, want to get strong for this. You need a proper strength cycle. Takes, in my experience, 8 to 12 weeks to get done.
Yeah, and really make sure that you are starting at a load that is manageable, that you can perform with absolute perfect flawless technique. I think what happens to a lot of people and why strength cycles sometimes don't work is because they start at a too high weight.
Yes.
And essentially either form breaks down and they won't be able to lift the weight towards the final few weeks where you're supposed to be peaking, but essentially you're already pushing too hard in one of those prep phases.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's in a lot of the early phases, we spoke about it in 531, is adaptation. And also, so what we're saying is the body needs to get used to it. It should be, in some of the early phases, it should actually be quite easy whilst they let your body adapt to it. The end, like sometimes 531 is not massively hard, like the second one we're talking about. 5x5 I've always found hard. Maybe because I've got the load right, or maybe I'm not doing it right. But sometimes 531, which is the second one we're going to speak about, is actually not super hard at the early parts, but it gets incredibly hard.
Well, let's jump into it.
Yeah.
The 531 is the Wendler cycle, and that works like this. It's a 4-day a week, ideally. Some people can do it 3 days, but ideally it's 4 days. It always has one major lift. It varies between press, pull, press, squat. So you have 2 days a week where you do press. One is vertical, one is horizontal.
Right.
And there's additional assistance exercises together with that. The week 1 of the program is 3x5. That means you do 3 sets of 5 reps on each of those movements. The next week, you do 3x3 on each of those movements with increased load. The week 3, it's 3x5. It's 3 sets. First set is 5 reps. Then second set is 3 reps. And then 1 rep for the last, where again the load is increasing. The 4th week, you're deloading. You're still working. You're doing 3x5, but at a lighter load than you did in week 1. And then you kind of just get back into week 1, and you keep cycling that. So this cycle actually deloads you every 4th week compared to the 5x5,
right,
where we're talking about only after 7 to 9 weeks.
Yeah.
Which is quite an interesting...
Yeah.
It's quite interesting because this program seems already less compound than the 5x5.
Yeah.
And already has more deload phases.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
but I think at the same time, mate, that's because they're expecting you during the work phases to really have your percentages dialed in.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the things, percentages are based off your 90% of your 1 rep max. If you know your 1 rep max and you do Wendler at the right weights, it's super challenging. So obviously your body needs that time to recover.
Yeah, definitely. So this is one of the other quite famous, and I think it links quite well over to the Wendler, the 5x5, and the Wendler, a little bit similar systems.
Yeah. Moving on.
We have the German volume training system, which is a classic. It's a 10x10. I think everyone in the bodybuilding world. So this is more towards like hypertrophy and muscle size versus the strength protocols we've been talking about.
Yep.
And this is basically performing 10 sets of 10 repetitions with a short rest in between. So that's a rest around 1 minute to really overload and really put as much stress as possible on that movement. And by that, getting a big adaptation. So here we're also only talking about touching one compound movement a week in sense of like you would only do 10x10 squats once a week.
Yeah.
And then you could do the same with a pulling or a pressing exercise as well.
I think that's another thing that's super important that's maybe a misconception is that when people try to get strong, they overtrain, and we're talking a lot about overtraining, but they might do, and I've actually followed a squat cycle, which was, I can't remember the name of it, but it was back squat every day to max, drop it down and do 3 or 6 sets of 3 at about 80 or 90%, and you max out every single day, which I just felt awful doing. It's absolutely brutal. I can't remember the name, but the Russians and the Germans, the old style again, is literally touching on the movement one time per week and training that movement and that muscle group so hard at that time that you probably need the whole week to recover. I mean, that's how it works, right?
Yeah.
You're doing 10 by 10. It's different level.
And the Russian what the Russians are really famous for is the whole periodization model, and that's kind of where that comes from, which means that you go through different blocks or different phases with different purposes. So a classic format for their strength training would be up to around 12 weeks. The first 4 weeks is a general training phase. The second 4 weeks is a hypertrophy training phase. And the last 4 weeks is a maximum strength training phase.
Yeah.
So it kind of takes you through a full 12-week cycle with each kind of phase having a certain purpose and a certain specific adaptation you're looking for.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way they're building up. And most systems are now kind of pulled up after this, like periodization models, not just in strength, but as well in endurance sports and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They kind of pull in this periodization model, but essentially periodization is just a general term, and there's many different types of periodization, and everybody has their different twist on it. And the Russians, that's basically.
That's the way they do it. So I think every good strength program, mate, just to sort of to wrap that point up, every good strength program should have some form of periodization, deload in it as well.
Yeah, so it's very simple. Load, overload, deload.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a little bit kind of how it follows. You start by loading the system, getting used to it.
Yep.
Then you start overloading to get adaptations. Then you need to deload to actually make all those gains.
Make the gains. Now, if you are watching the video version, which I fully suggest you do because we've got some new technology and it's basically working, you can hop, if you have a look right now, I'm going to put this on the screen and you can read through it. This is super cool, and it's an article from 2009 by one of the guys we're talking about as well, and I love the start of it. It's a little bit rude for those people that are easily offended, and Jim Wendler says, just so we are clear, either people want to do 5-3-1 or they don't. I really want to help people, but if they won't take my advice, there's nothing I can do. That's fine by me. I don't fight battles. I just don't fucking care. Arguing about strength training theory is stupid, and the reason I came up with 5-3-1 was that I wanted to program a program that eliminated stupid thoughts from my head and just let me go into the weight room and get shit done. I've been doing training for 20 years, and this is what I've learned. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that being on the screen for those of you that are watching over on YouTube, and those that don't, please start doing so. The reason why I share this is because it sort of wraps up the show and hammers back Jim Wendler himself. He's on T-Nation a lot. That was from T-Nation that I just showed that thing. And he has been doing strength training for 20 years, and he's found it to work pretty damn good. So I think the bottom line, mate, here, and the learning here is that strength training protocols that we use should be ones that have been used, like the best ones are ones that have been used for a number of years. That's kind of what we've been talking about as well.
Yeah,
we've been talking, like when we pulled up the best ones, when you search on Google for the best ones, they're the ones you're going to get. 5x5, Wendler, Russian, and German. Take a bit of time to do it, and you'll get the strength gains.
Definitely.
Awesome. There we go. That has been episode 2 of this awesome series all about getting stronger. If you missed episode 1, hop over 515, Defining Strength. And mate, let's get them a little bit excited for next week. 519 is going to be episode 3, and we're going to talk about strength at InnerFight. Give us a quick intro to that, mate.
We're going to talk about the theory that we kind of use and how we try to get our members strong. We run strength cycles. We do retest every 12 weeks. We spend a lot of time doing tempo work, and we're going to kind of dig into that in the next episode to give people an insight on how we kind of like to design our things here in InnerFight.
That episode is out next week, folks. Next Sunday, you can get a hold of it. This has been episode 2 of the Strength Series, Getting Stronger. Hope you've enjoyed it. Tune in next week. We're going to talk all about how we make people stronger humans.